Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the silk slippers of a young noblewoman in medieval England, circa 1347. Picture this: you're barely 15, lying in a carved wooden bed as dawn breaks through narrow castle windows. And today you're getting married to a man whose face you've only glimpsed once during negotiations between your fathers. The morning air smells of rushes and lavender, but underneath lurks the metallic tang of anxiety because, let's be honest, you probably won't survive the next 10 years of childbirth if medieval statistics have anything to say about it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. All right, let's begin the story. You're awakened not by gentle touches, but by purposeful hands. Your mothers, your aunts, your older sisters. They've been up since before the cocks crow, heating water, preparing mysterious bundles of herbs, whispering prayers you've never heard before. The fire crackles in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across tapestries depicting unicorns and virgins. How fitting, considering what everyone's obsessed with today. Your intact maidenhead, your youngest sister, barely 10, watches wide-eyed as the women strip you naked without ceremony. Close your eyes, child. Your mother snaps at her. Though historians still argue whether such modesty was genuinely practiced, or if medieval people were far more casual about nudity than we imagine. What we do know is that your body is no longer yours alone. It's family property, soon to be transferred like a land deed. The women examine you with clinical efficiency and they check for rashes, marks, anything that might suggest disease or witch marks. One aunt, the one who always smells of ale, pinches your hips and declares them wide enough for breeding. Another tests the firmness of your breasts, nodding approvingly. You want to shrink away, but where would you go? This is tradition. As old as the stones in the castle walls, your mother produces a white linen shift, so fine you can see through it, from your grandmother's wedding. She says, though you suspect it's actually new, just artificially aged with tea and smoke to seem like a cherished heirloom. Medieval people loved their symbolic gestures almost as much as they loved their practical jokes. Speaking of which, your cousins keep giggling about something they've hidden in your wedding chest. Probably a crude fertility charm shaped like, well, let's just say medieval humor wasn't subtle. The smell of bread wafts up from the kitchens below, mixed with roasting meats, and your stomach churns, not from hunger, but from knowledge. Your mother has been preparing you for months with increasingly frank discussions about what happens between husbands and wives. Still, her explanations were wrapped in euphemism. When he plants his seed in your garden, as if you're about to become a farmer instead of a wife. Through the window, you hear horses arriving in the courtyard, wedding guests, each one expecting to be fed, entertained, and given front row seats to as much of your personal business as tradition allows. Some have traveled for days to witness this transfer of property. Sorry, sacred union. The church bells haven't started yet, but they will soon, announcing to every soul within miles that today you cease to be your father's daughter and become your husband's wife. Your hair, which has been growing loose and free for 15 years, must now be tamed. The women attack it with combs made of bone, pulling and twisting until tears spring to your eyes. Beauty is suffering, your aunt says, accidentally jabbing your scalp with a pin. They weave ribbons through the braids, blue for purity, white for innocence, gold for the wealth you bring to this union. Your dowry includes 3 manors, a salt mine, and a percentage of wool profits from your father's lands. You're essentially a walking investment portfolio with reproductive capabilities. The fringe historical records suggest some brides wore flowers that had been blessed by passing them through the smoke of burning herbs, mugwort for fertility, rosemary for remembrance, sage for wisdom. Your own crown combines all three, though the smoke has left them slightly wilted and brown at the edges. Perfect metaphor for how you feel right now, as the women dress you layer by layer, shift, kirtle, surcoat, each more elaborate than the last. You catch glimpses of yourself in the polished silver mirror. You look like a stranger, like one of those saints painted on the church walls. Serene, untouchable, about as real as a unicorn, which reminds you of that persistent medieval belief that only virgins could tame unicorns. After today, you'll never see one again. At least according to the mythology your nurse used to whisper. The sun climbs higher. Soon, very soon, they'll come for you. But first, one more tradition awaits. One your mother has been dreading as much as you have. The door opens, and in walks your future mother-in-law, flanked by two stern-faced midwives. Their eyes are already fixed on you with professional assessment, and you realize with a sinking stomach that your wedding day humiliations have only just begun. Your future mother-in-law sweeps into the chamber like a siege engine approaching castle walls. Lady Margaret, you must call her mother after today, stands barely 5 feet tall, but commands the room with the authority of someone who survived 4 husbands and birthed 9 children. The two midwives flanking her look equally formidable, their faces mapped with lines from decades of peering between noble ladies' legs. Out, Lady Margaret commands, and your female relatives scatter like chickens before a fox. Only your mother remains, pressing herself against the wall as if she might disappear into the tapestry. You've heard whispers about this moment, but nothing quite prepared you for the clinical coldness in Lady Margaret's eyes as she approaches. Disrobe, she says simply. Your fingers fumble with the laces they just tied, undoing all that careful work. The beautiful layers puddle at your feet. Thousands of silver pennies worth of silk and samite reduced to a heap on the rush-covered floor. You stand in only your shift, then not even that. Goosebumps racing across your skin despite the fire's warmth. The first midwife circles you slowly. Making small humming noises, she prods your spine, checking for straightness and "No witches' marks," she announces, as if disappointed. The second midwife, younger but no less severe, kneels to examine your feet. Good arches, she'll stand through long labours. They discuss you like horse traders evaluating breeding stock, which essentially, you realise with growing horror, you are on the bed. Lady Margaret orders, knees drawn up. Your mother makes a small, wounded sound, but doesn't intervene. This is the price of marrying into one of England's oldest families. Your body must be verified like a merchant checking coins for false metal. The examination itself is swift but thorough, conducted with fingers that smell of vinegar and something medicinal. You stare at the bed's canopy, counting the embroidered roses to distract yourself from the indignity. Intact, the older midwife proclaims with satisfaction. The maidenhead is whole and healthy, and they actually call witnesses into the room. Your mother, 2 of your aunts, and Lady Margaret's own sister, to observe and later testify to your purity. Medieval legal documents from this period show such testimonies were recorded and filed with marriage contracts. One particularly detailed account from 1348 describes how a bride fainted during examination and had to be revived with burnt feathers under her nose. But the inspection isn't over. The younger midwife produces a small vial of clear liquid, urine. You realize with dawning horror, Not yours, but from a pregnant woman, for the fertility test. She explains, though historians still argue whether this practice was medical superstition or early hormone detection. You're instructed to add a drop of your own urine to the vial. If it clouds, you're fertile. If it stays clear, well, let's just say your marriage prospects would dramatically diminish. The liquid clouds immediately, almost suspiciously fast, and you catch a knowing look between the midwives and wonder if the test is rigged. After all, your dowry is too valuable to risk on authentic medical procedures. Lady Margaret nods approvingly. She'll breed well, she declares. As if you've passed the first test of many, now comes the part that sounds like something from a witch trial, but was apparently standard practice among nobility. The midwives check for signs of unnatural congress with demons, which mostly involves looking for extra nipples, supposedly used to suckle familiar spirits, and checking if your hymen has any unusual characteristics that might suggest supernatural interference. One medieval medical text seriously discusses how to identify if a maiden has been corrupted by incubi, those lustful demons who supposedly seduced women in their sleep. Your mother finally finds her voice. Surely this is sufficient proof of my daughter's virtue. But Lady Margaret isn't finished. She produces a small leather pouch and withdraws what looks like a dried beetle, blister beetle. She explains, to test her responses. Before you can protest, she presses it against your inner thigh. The burning sensation makes you yelp, but you don't pull away. You've learned that showing weakness now might be interpreted as guilt or unworthiness. Good, Lady Margaret says, noting how quickly your skin reddens. Her humours are properly balanced, hot and moist, as a young woman should be. Medieval medicine believed women were naturally colder and wetter than men, requiring the heat of intercourse to achieve proper health. The fact that your skin reacts strongly to irritants apparently suggests you'll respond appropriately to your husband's warming influence. The midwives now turn their attention to your breasts, checking for firmness, symmetry, and especially the color of your nipples. Too pale suggests weak blood. Too dark might indicate hidden disease or excessive lust. Yours are declared rose-colored and suitable, which will be formally reported to your future husband. One fringe historical account mentions a bride whose dark nipples caused such concern that the wedding was postponed until priests could perform purification rituals. Throughout this ordeal, you've noticed something odd. The midwives keep exchanging glances when they think no one's looking, and the younger one actually suppresses a smile when checking your teeth. Yes, they check those too. Good teeth suggest good breeding. Later, you'll learn these same women have been examining noble brides for 30 years and have never once found anything wrong with a girl whose dowry exceeded 1,000 marks. Funny how virginity directly correlates with wealth. Finally, mercifully, they allow you to dress again, but not before Lady Margaret performs one last test. She holds a piece of polished jetstone between your breasts and waits. If it grows warm, you're pure. If it stays cold, you've been touched by evil, the stone, warmed by her own hands moments before, naturally heats against your skin. Excellent, she pronounces, though you catch your mother rolling her eyes. Even medieval people, it seems, knew theatre when they saw it. As they file out, the older midwife pauses at the door. You did well, child, she says quietly. Most girls cry or faint. You'll survive what comes next. It's meant as comfort, but as you stand there, skin still burning from the beetle and dignity in tatters, you wonder what could possibly be worse than what just happened. Sweet summer child, you're about to find out. The bathing chamber has been transformed into something between a pagan temple and an apothecary's shop. Steam rises from a massive wooden tub that took 6 servants an hour to fill, and the air hangs thick with scents that make your head spin. Rosemary, thyme, sage, and something sweeter you can't identify. Your Aunt Elisande, the one everyone whispers knows the old ways, presides over this production like a high priestess preparing a sacrifice. Strip again, she commands, but her voice carries warmth the midwives lacked. This time, we cleanse you for joy, not judgment. The other women have returned, bringing armfuls of herbs, vials of oils, and rather alarmingly, what appears to be a dried bat wrapped in red silk. You've entered the realm where Christian marriage preparation collides head-on with traditions older than the castle itself. The water, when you step in, is almost painfully hot and tinged green from the herbs steeping in muslin bags. Feverfew for easy childbirth, your mother explains, adding another bundle, pennyroyal to ensure your womb quickens. No one mentions that pennyroyal, in higher doses, does quite the opposite. Medieval women had their secrets, passed in whispers and hidden in recipes for promoting women's courses, and your cousin Agnes contributes a handful of rose petals while giggling about how they'll make you sweet-smelling for your husband's pleasure. But your old nurse adds vervain when the others aren't looking, muttering something about protection from enchantments. The church officially condemns such hedge magic, yet historians still argue whether medieval nobility genuinely believed in these practices or simply enjoyed the theatre of tradition. Now, for the special editions, Aunt Elisande announces, producing items that definitely didn't come from the castle's herb garden. She drops in 3 perfect pearls. Dissolved wealth brings wealthy sons, and a piece of coral, to prevent your blood from growing too hot with passion. The dried bat gets unwrapped and waved over the water 3 times before being discreetly pocketed again. You're fairly certain bat waving isn't church approved, but who's going to tell the bishop? The washing itself becomes a ritual. 7 women, 7 times washing each part of you, 7 prayers for each washing, except the prayers shift between proper Latin and something older, something that rhymes in the old tongue your grandmother spoke. Your hair gets special attention, washed first with egg whites, for shine and to bind your husband's affection, then with beer, for thickness and many children, and finally with water in which silver coins have been soaked, for prosperity and to prevent your husband from straying. Breathe deep, your mother instructs, as they pour water steeped with mugwort over your head. The bitter herb is supposed to bring prophetic dreams, and indeed, the steam makes you dizzy enough to see strange shapes in the water's surface. One medieval account describes a bride who claimed to see her future children's faces in the bathwater, all 12 of them. She only birthed 3, but perhaps prophecy adjusts for infant mortality rates. The fringe traditions get stranger. Your aunt produces a small knife and carefully clips a single nail from each of your fingers and toes. These will be burned with myrrh to ensure your husband's fidelity, or so claims a practice dating back to pre-Norman times. Another cousin insists on adding water that's been used to wash a baby boy, to encourage male children. You sincerely hope they change the baby's soiled linens first. Between the washing rounds, they oil your skin with increasingly exotic substances. Almond oil is straightforward enough, but then comes oil of lilies for purity. Oil infused with powdered emeralds. Your father nearly choked when he saw that expense. And something your aunt calls oil of Venus, but won't elaborate on. It smells musky and makes your skin tingle in ways that bring a blush to your cheeks. The women laugh knowingly. Now for the important part. Elisande says, producing a small golden box S. Inside lies a chunk of what looks like crystallized honey, but smells like the crypt beneath the chapel. "Mummy," she explains casually, as if grinding up ancient Egyptian corpses for cosmetics is perfectly normal. Mixed with rose oil and myrrh, it prevents stretch marks and ensures your beauty survives childbearing. You want to protest, but she's already smearing it across your belly with practiced strokes. The talk turns earthy as the steam rises. Your married cousins share increasingly bold advice about pleasing husbands, preventing conception when needed, a pessary of crocodile dung and honey, though beeswax works better, and ensuring you birth sons. Lie on your right side after coupling and eat hot, dry foods. Medieval medical texts confirm these beliefs were widespread, though their effectiveness was somewhat less than advertised. Your mother suddenly remembers another tradition and sends a servant running to the dovecote. The girl returns with a confused-looking dove, which your aunt promptly holds over the bathwater. If it coos, you'll have a peaceful marriage. If it stays silent, the dove, probably stunned by the herb smell, remains mute. An awkward pause follows before someone pokes it, producing an indignant squawk. Everyone agrees to count as a coo. As you soak, they prepare the final element. Your bathwater will be saved and used to water the herbs in your marriage garden. Apparently, this ensures fertility, though you suspect it mainly ensures very well fertilized rosemary. One peculiar account from 1346 describes a bride whose bathwater was stolen by a rival family and used to curse her womb. She remained childless for 3 years until the curse was lifted by bathing in water, blessed by 7 priests and 1 slightly confused rabbi. The bath finally ends when the church bells ring terce. As they lift you from the tub, your skin pink and soft as a newborn's, you notice the water has turned murky, with more than just herbs. Layers of childhood have been washed away, along with the dirt. They wrap you in linen towels that have been warming by the fire, scented with lavender and something else. Ah yes, there's that hidden fertility charm your cousins mentioned. It's exactly as crude as you imagined, carved from oak and tucked between the towel's folds. "Keep it under your pillow tonight," Agnes whispers with a wink, though after seeing your husband at the betrothal, you might not need magical help. You haven't had the heart to tell her that your glimpse of your future lord showed a man older than your father, with fewer teeth than fingers. But then again, he's wealthy enough to afford mummy powder for your beauty routine, so perhaps that's a fair trade. They're dressing you again now, in clean linens that have been blessed by the priest, and possibly also by your aunt's bat. Time for the next ordeal. The public reading of your marriage contract, where you'll learn exactly what rights you're about to lose. Spoiler alert, it's most of them. The great hall buzzes with voices as you enter, now dressed in your finest gown, still smelling of herbs and holy water. Your father stands at the high table beside a thin man in black robes, the lawyer who spent 3 months negotiating your transformation from person to property. The contract lies spread before them, multiple pages of Latin that determine your fate more thoroughly than any prophecy in bathwater. Ah, the bride arrives. Your father announces, gesturing for you to approach. The assembled guests, lords, ladies, merchants important enough to warrant invitation, turn to stare. You recognize the predatory gleam in some eyes. They're calculating what this alliance means for their own marriage negotiations. Your younger sister watches from the corner, probably thanking God she has 3 more years before her own contract gets drafted. The lawyer clears his throat and begins reading in that particular drone that makes Latin sound even deader than usual. But your tutor taught you well, and you understand every word that strips away your autonomy. The bride's dowry shall consist of 3 manors in Kent, yearly revenues from salt production at Droitwich, 200 marks in silver. The list continues while you stand there, a living receipt for this transaction. Furthermore, the lawyer continues, all properties currently held by the bride shall pass entirely into her husband's possession upon speaking of vows, and this includes the small manor your grandmother left specifically to you, the one where you spent summers learning to manage accounts and settle disputes. After today, you'll need your husband's permission to visit it. Medieval property law was refreshingly straightforward. What's yours becomes his. What's his remains his. And if you complain, that's heresy or witchcraft, or possibly both. Your future husband's obligations get considerably less detail. He must provide you with suitable maintenance according to your station, which sounds reasonable until you realize suitable gets defined by him. He promises not to beat you beyond reasonable correction. And you notice several wives in the audience unconsciously touching old bruises. The contract specifies he can't sell your dowry lands without your consent. But historians still argue whether this protection held any real weight when a husband could simply lock up a disagreeable wife until she agreed. The morning gift, the lawyer announces, perking up the audience. This is the fun part. What your husband will give you after the wedding night, assuming you please him. Lord Robert grants to his bride the manor at Westbrook, with all rents and revenues, to be held by her for life. A generous gift. Actually, your Aunt Margaret got only a handful of silver coins and a brooch from her first husband. Then again, her dowry was also smaller, and she wasn't expected to birth an heir for one of England's oldest families. The lawyer drones on about children. Legitimate ones belong to the father. Illegitimate ones don't exist. And if you die in childbirth, when you die in childbirth, statistics whisper, everything reverts to your husband anyway. You'll have no say in your children's marriages, education, or even whether they live with you. One notorious case from 1341 saw a lord send his wife's beloved daughter to a convent just to punish the mother for speaking too boldly at dinner. Should the bride commit adultery? The lawyer reads, warming to the dramatic bits. All properties revert immediately to the husband, and he may seek dissolution of the marriage. Fair enough. Except, should the husband commit adultery, the wife shall maintain her wifely duties and silence. The double standard hangs in the air like incense, thick and choking. Your cousin Catherine learned this lesson when she caught her husband with her own lady's maid. She kept quiet and died in her fourth childbirth at 22. Now comes the interesting part where church law and civil law start their delicate dance. The church insists marriage requires consent, that you must freely agree to this union. The lawyer asks if you consent, and you say yes, because what else can you say? Your fathers spent 2 years negotiating this alliance. The alternative isn't freedom. It's a convent, and not one of those nice ones where noble ladies write poetry and manage vast estates. Or you'd get the kind where you'd spend your days scrubbing floors and praying for everyone else's souls, the bride's widow portion. The lawyer continues, detailing what you'll receive if, when, your husband dies first. It's the medieval equivalent of a prenup, specifying exactly which properties you can hold as a widow. This part actually brings a slight smile to your face. Widows have rights that wives can only dream of. They can own property, make contracts, run businesses. Your husband's own mother has controlled more wealth as a widow than she ever did as a wife. No wonder she looked so pleased during your virginity inspection. Between the legal Latin, you catch whispered commentary from the crowd. 3 manors is generous for a third daughter. Someone mutters, yes, but have you seen Lord Robert? She'll earn every acre. Comes the reply, Medieval marriage contracts were public entertainment, and yours is providing plenty of gossip fodder. One merchant's wife loudly whispers about how her own contract included a clause about minimum conjugal visits. Apparently, her first husband preferred his hawks to his marriage bed. The contract includes fascinating specifics about your daily life. You'll receive an annual clothing allowance, enough for 2 new gowns, which sounds generous until you realize noble gowns cost more than peasant houses. You're guaranteed adequate servants. Though adequate is suspiciously undefined, you'll have the right to your own seal, a small power, but power nonetheless. With it, you can authorize household purchases, validate documents, and conduct the limited business allowed to married women. And finally, the lawyer concludes with theatrical flair, should the bride fail to produce an heir within 7 years, the husband may seek annulment on grounds of barrenness. Never mind that your husband is 63 and has failed to produce heirs with 2 previous wives. And the fringe medical texts of the period are fascinating here. They simultaneously blame women for all fertility problems while providing remedies that mostly involve the husband eating bizarre things like sparrow brains and bull testicles. Your father now produces the seal, pressing it into hot wax with the finality of a judge's gavel. You're instructed to touch the seal, symbolically agreeing to everything just read. As your finger meets the warm wax, you feel the last threads of girlhood snap. You're now legally bound to marry a man whose breath you've smelled exactly once, it wasn't pleasant, and whose temperament remains a mystery wrapped in expensive velvet. The crowd applauds politely as the contract gets rolled and tied with silk ribbons. Your transformation from person to property is complete, documented in triplicate, 1 copy for your father, 1 for your husband, 1 for the church. None for you. After all, married women can't enter legal contracts without their husband's permission, so why would you need your own copy? As servants clear the table for the feast, your mother appears at your elbow. It's not all bad, she whispers. I've survived 20 years of your father. But her eyes drift to your Aunt Isabel, widowed these 5 years and currently laughing with her steward about something definitely not related to grain inventory. The message is clear. Marriage is just the first test. Survival is the real game, and widowhood is the prize. The great hall transforms into a battlefield of gluttony as servants stream in bearing platters that would make a Roman emperor blush. You're seated at the high table between your father and future husband, trapped like a decorative centerpiece, while around you unfolds the kind of excess that would horrify peasants eating their daily gruel just beyond the castle walls. The smell hits you first, roasted meats, exotic spices, and underneath it all, the sweet sick scent of wine already working its magic on your guests. Your husband-to-be, Lord Robert, tears into a capon with his 4 remaining teeth, grease sliding down his chin into his grey beard. You delicately nibble at your manchet bread, knowing that eating too heartily would be considered unladylike, while eating too little might offend the cooks. Medieval dining etiquette is a minefield, where the wrong bite could brand you a glutton or a prideful wretch who scorns hospitality. The first course alone includes enough fowl to depopulate a small forest, swans resewn into their feathers, peacocks with their tail fans restored, a cockentrice, the front half of a pig sewn to the back half of a capon, that looks like something from a fever dream. Each dish arrives with ceremony, presented first to the Lord's table for approval. You notice several guests crossing themselves before eating the cockentrice. Apparently, some consider such chimeras an affront to God's natural order. Try the lamprey, my dear, Lord Robert suggests, gesturing with a knife that's seen better decades, caught fresh from the Thames. You suppress a shudder, knowing that lampreys are those eel-like nightmares with circular mouths full of teeth, but refusing would be an insult. So you accept a portion and discover it's been drowned in a sauce so heavy with cinnamon and galingale that you can't taste the horror underneath. Medieval cooks, solving problems with spices since 1066. The entertainment begins modestly enough, with minstrels playing sweet melodies. But as wine flows, things deteriorate rapidly. A juggler appears, tossing leather balls filled with dried peas, making increasingly crude jokes about handling a lady's purses. Your mother's jaw tightens, but the men roar with laughter. Medieval wedding feasts occupied a strange space where religious ceremony met pagan celebration, and propriety usually lost. Between the second and third courses, yes, there are 7 in total, because apparently noble digestion works differently. Dancers emerge. Their costumes leave little to imagination, and their gyrations make you understand why the church keeps threatening to ban wedding feasts. One dancer, wearing strategic ribbons and a fixed smile, performs directly in front of the high table. Lord Robert tosses her coins, his eyes lingering in the ways that tell you everything about your future marriage bed. The subtlety, someone cries, and servants struggle in with an elaborate sugar sculpture depicting, oh dear, it's supposed to be Cupid, but the proportions are all wrong, and his arrow points somewhere decidedly non-romantic. The courtiers find this hilarious. You concentrate on your wine, watered, thankfully, though not enough to completely dull the embarrassment. Historians still argue whether medieval people were genuinely less prudish than their Victorian descendants, or just better at compartmentalizing sacred and profane. Your cousin Edmund, deep in his cups, starts a drinking song about a maiden and a knight that gets progressively more explicit with each verse. By verse 4, even the men are looking uncomfortable. Your new mother-in-law, Lady Margaret, maintains her frozen smile while gripping her eating knife like she's considering amateur surgery. The song finally ends when Edmund falls face first into a pudding, which everyone agrees improves both the song and the pudding. The 4th course brings surprises, pies that, when cut open, release live birds. This sounds whimsical until you're in a hall with dozens of panicked songbirds defecating on guests, while hawks, brought by noble hunting enthusiasts, decide to give chase, and feathers float through the air like snow. Bird droppings splatter silk gowns, and one particularly aggressive dove makes a nest in the bishop's mitre. He pretends to find this delightful while secretly blessing himself against demonic possession. More wine, Lord Robert bellows, though his words slur together. Medieval wine was stronger than modern varieties, and feast wine got fortified with spices and honey that masked just how potent it was. You've been carefully pretending to sip, while actually pouring most of yours into the rushes under the table. A mouse down there seems to appreciate your generosity, though it's now walking in suspicious circles. The players arrive for the feast's theatrical portion, a morality play about marriage. Naturally, except the actor playing chastity keeps forgetting his lines and improvising with suggestions that would make a brothel madam blush. Fidelity and obedience, both played by men in terrible wigs, engage in a sword fight that somehow involves progressive undressing. The audience loves it. You wonder if this is standard wedding entertainment, or if someone's playing an elaborate prank. A fool appears. Every noble feast needs one, and begins riddling. His jokes walk the knife's edge between clever and crude. What goes in hard and stiff but comes out soft and wet, he asks, leering at you. Bread in pottage, he reveals. But his wink suggests everyone should think of the other answer. Medieval humour, all the subtlety of a battering ram. Twice the impact. By the 5th course, Several guests have disappeared to various corners for activities the shadows mercifully hide. Others have passed out in their trenches, faces planted in congealing sauce. One knight challenges another to a duel over some perceived slight involving a dropped handkerchiefs. They're too drunk to draw swords properly, so they settle for an aggressive hugging contest that ends with both mentoring about their mothers. The dessert course arrives: sugared fruits, honeyed nuts, and more architectural confections. One resembles a castle under siege, complete with tiny knights scaling walls. Another depicts a garden where every flower centre is crafted to look like, well, your Aunt Elisande whispers it represents fertility symbols. But you didn't need 3 years of Latin to recognize those particular symbols. The sugarwork maiden in the garden has an expression of alarm that feels deeply relatable. Your husband attempts to feed you a sugared plum, missing your mouth by several inches and leaving a sticky trail across your cheek. The gesture is supposed to be romantic, showing his intention to provide for you. Instead, it demonstrates that his hand-eye coordination departed around the third wine jug. You smile graciously, while internally cataloguing which convents accept married women who've mysteriously found religious calling. The final course, Thank All Saints, consists of wafers, hippocras, spiced wine to aid digestion, and small cakes shaped like body parts that definitely aren't mentioned in your prayer book. By now, the bishop has given up pretending shock and is cheerfully blessing the anatomical pastries for fertility, he declares, which might carry more weight if he weren't swaying like a ship in storm. As the feast winds down, you realize the worst is yet to come. Those still conscious begin eyeing you and Lord Robert with knowing looks. The bedding ceremony approaches, and based on the level of intoxication in the hall, it's going to be less sacred ritual and more barely controlled mob. Your mother catches your eye and nods toward the stairs. Time to prepare for the next ordeal, where your marriage bed becomes as public as this feast. The musicians strike up a particularly lewd tune about unlocking doors with special keys, subtle as a siege engine. These medievals, you rise on unsteady legs, not from wine, but from sheer exhaustion and anxiety. The crowd cheers. Lord Robert attempts to stand and mostly succeeds, though he lists severely to starboard. And this, you think as servants begin clearing the battlefield of plates and bodies, is the man you're about to pledge your body to. May the saints preserve you. Based on tonight's display, they're the only ones sober enough to help. The crowd surges forward like a tide of silk and wine breath, and suddenly you're being lifted, literally lifted, by multiple pairs of hands. Your protests dissolve into the roar of celebration as wedding guests hoist you and Lord Robert onto shoulders, beginning the mortifying parade to your marriage chamber hall. Someone starts a chant in Latin that definitely wasn't in your prayer book, and the whole processional takes on the energy of a riot blessed by clergy. To the bedchamber, they cry, as if you might have forgotten your destination. The narrow castle stairs become a dangerous funnel of drunk nobility, trying to navigate stone steps while carrying human cargo. Your head nearly collides with a low beam. Apparently, medieval architects didn't account for bride hauling when designing doorways. Behind you, Lord Robert's bearers struggle with his considerable weight, and you hear creative cursing in 3 languages when someone's foot finds another's shin. The chamber door looms ahead, decorated with fresh herbs and ribbons that do nothing to disguise its ominous purpose. They've prepared the room for hours. You can smell the rose petals from here, mixed with something muskier that makes your stomach flip. The crowd deposits you both at the threshold with varying degrees of grace. You remain upright. Lord Robert requires wall support. And then they do the unthinkable. They follow you inside. Your marriage bed dominates the space like an altar to procreation. It's been dressed in your finest linens, the ones your mother embroidered with fertility symbols disguised as innocent flowers. The posts hang with more herbs than an apothecary's shop, basil for love, sage for wisdom, and enough fertility-promoting plants to impregnate a statue. The mattress, has been stuffed with fresh straw mixed with rose petals, and, because medieval people never met a superstition they didn't like, eagle feathers to ensure male offspring. The blessing of the bed, Father Benedict announces, trying to impose religious order on what's essentially a pagan fertility ritual with Christian frosting. He produces his aspergillum and begins flinging holy water with enthusiasm that suggests he sampled the feast wine. The crowd presses closer, and suddenly your bedchamber contains more people than a market day. Someone's definitely groping someone else in the corner, and you're fairly certain that's not part of the liturgy. Lord Robert, meanwhile, has discovered the wine flagon thoughtfully left by the bedside. He drinks deeply while guests begin the traditional disrobing. Yes, disrobing, apparently. You can't be properly married until a crowd of increasingly intoxicated nobility has verified you're both entering the bed in your God-given glory. Hands reach for your laces, some helpful, some decidedly less so. Your careful morning toilette becomes undone in moments. The stockings, someone shouts, and the scramble begins. Wedding guests dive for your stockings as you kick them off, believing that catching one brings good luck in love. What follows resembles a battlefield more than a bedchamber. As grown lords and ladies wrestle over your undergarments, your cousin Agnes emerges victorious with one stocking, her hair completely dishevelled and someone else's sleeve in her teeth. The other stocking appears to have been torn in half, with both halves claimed by different parties who now argue about luck distribution. Your shift is all that stands between you and complete mortification. But tradition demands its removal. The women form a protective circle, theoretically for modesty, but their help involves much giggling and crude advice. Remember to breathe. One suggests helpfully, think of England. Counsels another. Though you're not sure how geography helps, your mother simply hands you a small vial. For the pain, she whispers. And you don't ask whether she means physical or existential. Lord Robert's disrobing proceeds with less ceremony and more comedy. His supporters, all thoroughly drunk, turn undressing him into a performance that would shame a brothel. His hose prove particularly challenging. Apparently, nobility doesn't account for swollen ankles when ordering tight clothing. It takes 3 men to remove his boots, and one flies off with such force it knocks over a candlestick. Quick-thinking servants prevent your marriage bed from becoming a pyre. Finally, horrifyingly, you're both reduced to essential humanity. They guide you into the bed, unnecessary. As you'd gladly dive under covers to escape the scrutiny, Lord Robert follows, moving with the careful precision of the extremely drunk trying to appear sober. The bed ropes creak ominously under your combined weight, and you pray they hold. Medieval engineering is wonderful until it isn't. Father Benedict begins the actual blessing, sprinkling more holy water over the bed until you're both lightly marinated in sanctity. He prays for fertility, of course, for harmony, unlikely, and for the marriage to be fruitful in all ways pleasing to God. You suspect God might avert his eyes from what's about to happen. The Latin drones on while guests offer their own blessings, ranging from sweetly sincere to absolutely obscene. May your union be blessed with sons, shouts one lord. May your wife's womb prove as fertile as your lands, adds another, which sounds more like property assessment than blessing. The women counter with their own wishes. May your husband's touch be gentle, concerned glance at Lord Robert, and may you find pleasure in your duties. Definitely your Aunt Elisande. Now comes the part that historians still argue about. How public was the consummation? In your case, they're drawing the bed curtains but not leaving. No, they're going to stand right there, listening for proof that the marriage is being properly sealed. And some helpful soul has even brought a drum to bang when the moment arrives, ensuring the entire castle knows when you've been officially transformed from maiden to wife. Lord Robert turns to you, his breath a mixture of wine, garlic, and dental decay that could fell an ox. Don't worry, my dear, he slurs, patting your hand with all the romance of someone checking produce. I've done this before. This is supposed to be reassuring. It is not. His 2 previous wives died in childbirth, which suggests his experience might not be the selling point he thinks it is. The crowd begins singing, actually singing, outside the bed curtains. The song involves a lot of agricultural metaphors about ploughing fields and planting seeds. Your education in Latin means you understand every horrifying verse, including the one comparing your maidenhead to a castle gate that must be bravely stormed. Medieval subtlety strikes again. Someone has thoughtfully, or sadistically, placed various items on the bedside table. More wine, a bowl of raw eggs for virility. What appears to be a dried bull's pizzle, you don't want to know. And several fertility charms that would make a pagan blush. There's also a small knife, which you eye hopefully, until remembering it's for the morning after sheet cutting ceremony. No escape that way. Perhaps they could give us some privacy. You suggest hopefully. Lord Robert laughs. A sound like rusty gate hinges. Nonsense. Tradition is tradition. He seems energized by the audience, which tells you uncomfortable things about your future. Meanwhile, the crowd has started placing bets, actual monetary bets, on how long the consummation will take. You hear coins changing hands and someone offering odds. The bishop, apparently deciding things need more spiritual guidance, begins reciting from the Song of Songs. His attempt at relevant scripture quickly derails as wine makes him creative with translations. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth becomes something involving tongues that definitely wasn't in the original Hebrew. Your mother makes a strangled sound, but whether from horror or suppressed laughter, you can't tell. And then, because this nightmare needs a crescendo, someone produces a recorder and begins playing a tune that sounds suspiciously like rutting cats. Others join with drums, creating a cacophony that ensures everyone in a 3-mile radius knows exactly what's supposed to be happening in this bed. You pull a pillow over your head, wondering if suffocation counts as consummation. Your mother's hand suddenly appears through the bed curtains like a lifeline thrown to a drowning sailor. A moment with my daughter, she announces, with such authority that even the drunken mob quiets for the final maternal counsel. The crowd reluctantly parts, though they don't go far, hovering just outside like vultures waiting for carrion. Lord Robert grunts his acquiescence and rolls away, giving you both the illusion of privacy behind the heavy curtains. She leans close, her breath warm against your ear, speaking quickly and quietly. Listen well, for I'll have no chance to tell you this again. Her fingers find yours under the covers, squeezing tight. When he mounts you, breathe shallow and think of other things. The pain is sharpest the first time but fades. Practical advice, delivered with the same tone she once used to teach you embroidery stitches. But mother, you start, and she cuts you off with a finger to your lips. There are ways to ease a man's passage. She continues, producing a small vial from her sleeve. Oil of almonds mixed with other things. Apply it beforehand if you can. She presses it into your palm, and you wonder how many mothers have passed this exact vial to their daughters. A secret tradition of mercy older than the castle walls. If you quicken with child, she whispers urgently, aware your time is limited. Eat no green fruit, avoid cold baths, and sleep on your left side only until the 4th month. Then you're right. Medical advice that sounds like superstition, but comes from hard-won experience. When your time comes, send for Marjorie the midwife, not the physician. Physicians think they know women's bodies, but they've never pushed life through their own nethers. The crowd grows restless. Someone banging on a drum. Your mother speaks faster. To conceive sons, lie with him when the moon waxes. Never when it wanes. Let him spill first. Then hold your knees to your chest and think masculine thoughts. Warfare, hunting, mathematics. You want to laugh at the absurdity, but a deadly serious expression stops you. Medieval medicine might be half nonsense, but when it's your only defense against dying in childbirth, you'll take whatever magic you can get to prevent conception. She breathes so quietly you barely hear. Count your days carefully, 14 days after your monthly blood. Avoid his bed if you can. Claim headaches, saints' days, anything. Dangerous advice. The Church condemns any interference with God's plan for procreation, but she continues. Aunt Elisande knows herbs that can bring on delayed courses. Visit her if needed, but tell no one. Lord Robert clears his throat pointedly. Time's running out. Your mother grips your face between her hands, forcing you to meet her eyes. Most importantly, survive. Submit when you must. Resist when you can. And remember, men are easily led by their appetites. A clever wife rules through the stomach and the bedchamber. Let him think every idea is his own. But what if I can't? What if he... Your voice breaks, She pulls you close, and for a moment, you're just a frightened girl in her mother's arms. You're stronger than you know. She whispers fiercely, I survived your father's bed, and his father was worse. We come from a line of women who endure. Now, she pulls back, wiping your tears with efficient tenderness. When he enters you, bite down on this. She produces a small piece of leather, soft from use. It helps with the pain and muffles sounds. Too much crying disturbs men's performance. The practicality of it breaks your heart. How many nights did she bite this same leather? How many women before her? One last thing, she says, as the crowd begins chanting. The sheets will be checked come morning. If there's insufficient blood. She produces another vial. This one dark red. Chicken blood. Sprinkle it while he sleeps. Your virtue is nobody's business but God's, and he's more forgiving than gossip, Sal. The curtains suddenly part, and Lady Margaret's face appears like a harbinger of doom. Enough motherly comfort. She declares, the marriage must be consummated while witnesses can attest. Your mother is pulled away, but not before pressing one last item into your hand. A small medal of St. Margaret, patron of childbirth. She escaped the dragon's belly. Your mother whispers as she's dragged off. So can you. The crowd resurges, their patience exhausted. Lord Robert, fortified by wine and audience expectations, turns to you with purpose. Your mother's advice rings in your ears as he heaves himself over you, his weight pressing you into the feather mattress. You think of her leather strip, but can't reach it. So you bite your own lip instead, tasting copper. Relax, girl. He grunts, his hands fumbling with unfamiliar territory. You try to follow your mother's advice. Breathe shallow. Think of other things. You catalogue the herbs hanging from the bedposts. Basil, rosemary, sage. You count the threads in the canopy above. You recite Latin conjugations, anything but the immediate reality of sweating flesh and probing fingers. The crowd outside has started another song. This one about ships entering harbours. Your husband's efforts intensify, and you understand why your mother mentioned breathing. It's hard to breathe when crushed beneath a man who outweighs you by treble. The pain, when it comes, is sharp as promised. Like being split by a dull blade, you taste blood from your bitten lip. There's a good girl. Lord Robert pants, mistaking endurance for enthusiasm. The crowd cheers at some sign they recognize, perhaps his increased vigor, perhaps your inadvertent gasp. Someone bangs that infernal drum, and others take up the rhythm. Your marriage is being consummated to percussion, like some ancient fertility rite. You focus on your mother's whispered wisdoms, the secrets passed between women who've survived this particular battlefield. Think of England. One cousin had said, but you think instead of your mother's garden, where she taught you which herbs heal and which harm. You think of Aunt Elisande's knowing smile when she speaks of her widow's freedom. You think of the convent that might have been, with its cold cells and rigid prayers, and wonder if this is truly the better choice. Nearly there. Lord Robert gasps, and you're not sure if he's encouraging himself or informing you. The crowd's chanting reaches crescendo. Someone's definitely taking bets on duration. You hear numbers being called. Your husband's breathing becomes ragged, his movements frantic, and then the shudder that runs through him signals completion. The crowd erupts in celebration as if they've witnessed a military victory, which, in a way, they have. The conquest of your maidenhead, the successful transfer of property, the potential beginning of an heir. Lord Robert collapses beside you, already snoring before his head hits the pillow. You lie still, processing the transformation. Blood seeps between your thighs. Not enough for the morning's inspection, perhaps, but your mother's chicken blood will solve that. Everything hurts in ways you didn't know were possible, but you're alive. You're officially wed, and the crowd is finally, blessedly, beginning to disperse. Well done, someone shouts through the curtains. May you be blessed with fruit of this union. You touch your belly, wondering if even now, life quickens within. The thought terrifies you more than anything else tonight. Your mother survived 6 births. 2 of your sisters didn't survive 1. The dice of women's fate roll with every coupling. As the chamber slowly empties, you carefully reach for your mother's vial of almond oil. Too late for tonight. But there will be other nights. Many, many other nights. Lord Robert's snores shake the bed frame, and you realize this is your life now. This bed, this man, this duty. You clutch St. Margaret's medal and pray for the dragon's belly to be more merciful than a marriage bed. The chamber door clicks shut as the last of the revelers finally stumbles away, leaving you alone with your snoring husband and the wreckage of your innocence. You lie still for a long moment, listening to Lord Robert's breathing settle into the rhythm of deep sleep, before carefully extracting yourself from beneath his arm. Every movement sends sharp pains through regions you'd never had cause to notice before. Standing proves challenging. Your legs shake like a newborn foal's, and there's blood enough on your thighs to satisfy tomorrow's inspectors. You stumble to the wash basin, grateful someone thought to leave fresh water and clean cloths. The face reflected in the water's surface looks alien, lips swollen from biting, eyes wide with shock. This is what a wife looks like. Apparently, as you clean yourself with trembling hands, trying to be quiet enough not to wake him, Lord Robert suddenly speaks. Come back to bed. His voice, clearer than expected, makes you freeze. The washcloth drips pink water onto the rush-covered floor. You turn slowly, finding him propped on one elbow, studying you with eyes that hold more clarity than they've shown all evening. My lord, I was just... You begin, but he waves dismissively. No need for formality in our bedchamber. Come, we should talk. This is unexpected. based on your cousin's wedding night stories. Husbands typically fell asleep immediately after claiming their prize. Not unlike a well-fed hunting hound, you approach cautiously, pulling a bedrobe around yourself. He pats the space beside him, the same space where, moments ago, your girlhood ended. You perch on the edge, ready to flee. You did well, he says, and you're not sure if he means during the act or simply surviving it. I know this is difficult. My first wife cried for 3 days after our wedding night. The casual mention of previous wives sends ice through your veins. How did she die? The question escapes before wisdom can catch it. Lord Robert's face darkens, but not with anger, something closer to regret. Childbed fever. After bearing our son, he lived 4 days. He reaches for the wine flagon, drinks deeply. The second tried to give me an heir for 6 years. The birth killed them both. The babe was turned wrong. Wonderful. Your marriage bed is haunted by 2 ghost wives and their doomed children. You wonder if their blood ever stained these same sheets, if they bit their lips against the same pain, if they too sat here afterward wondering how many times they'd have to endure this before death released them. I need an heir, he continues, stating the obvious with drunk solemnity. My brother circles like a vulture, waiting for me to die without issue so he can claim everything. That's why I paid your father's price. 3 manors is steep, but your family breeds well. Your mother had 6 children who lived. Your grandmother had 8. Ah yes, your proven breeding stock genetics. How romantic. You think of your mother's whispered advice about preventing conception and wonder if you dare. The church calls it sin, but the church doesn't die screaming in blood-soaked beds, trying to push out heirs for ungrateful husbands. I won't be cruel to you, Lord Robert says, perhaps mistaking your silence for fear. I'm not one of those husbands who beats wives for sport. As long as you're obedient and fertile, we'll manage well enough. The bar for marital success is apparently subterranean. Don't beat your wife. Get her pregnant. Everyone's happy. Medieval marriage, where basic human decency counts as extraordinary kindness. He reaches out, running a finger along your cheek with surprising gentleness. You're prettier than I expected. Your father's portrait painter was not generous. You remember that portrait session, how the artist made you sit for hours in uncomfortable poses, creating an image that looked nothing like you. Apparently, false advertising works both ways in marriage negotiations. What do you expect of me, you ask? Deciding directness might serve better than cowering. Lord Robert seems pleased by the question. Run my household efficiently. Bear my children. Don't cuckold me with the stable boys. He counts these off on fingers like a merchant listing inventory. Smile at feasts. Support my political ambitions. Share my bed when required. How often is required? Another bold question. But you need to know what you're facing. He laughs. Not the harsh sound from earlier, but something almost warm. I'm 63. Girl. Not 23. Once a week should suffice. Perhaps twice when you're fertile. You file this information away, already calculating which saints' feast days might provide convenient excuses. My mother says I should learn your preferences. You venture, remembering her advice about ruling through appetite. In all things, food, comfort, companionship. Lord Robert's eyebrows rise. Clever woman. Your mother. Yes. Learn my preferences. I like my meat well spiced. My wine watered less than most. My bed warmed but not hot. I rise early for prayers. You needn't join unless you wish. I hunt twice weekly, weather permitting. He continues listing habits and preferences, painting a picture of your future life. Morning prayers, optional for you. Breaking fast together, required. Separate pursuits until dinner, blessed freedom. Evening together, performance time. It sounds manageable, even bearable, until he adds, and of course, you'll need to be churched after each birth before returning to my bed. Each birth, plural, assumed here. You think of his 2 dead wives and wonder how many births you'll survive. The mathematics of medieval nobility are brutal. Need many heirs because most die. But creating heirs kills mothers. It's a deadly equation where women's bodies are the variable constantly being solved for. I have books, he says unexpectedly. Can you read? When you nod, his face brightens. Good. My library needs organizing. My steward is lettered but has no patience for it. You may spend your mornings there if you wish. This is actually wonderful. You'd expect it to be banned from anything resembling education. But apparently Lord Robert values literacy over ignorance in his wife. What languages, you ask? Interest genuine now. Latin, French, some Greek texts I can't read myself, a few books in English, though mostly legal documents, some medical texts that might interest you, one specifically about women's ailments and childbirth, and he doesn't seem to realize he's just offered you access to knowledge that might save your life. The conversation continues, and you realize something unexpected. Lord Robert, when not performing drunken masculinity for an audience, is almost pleasant, still old enough to be your grandfather, still expecting you to risk death bearing his children, but at least capable of viewing you as more than a walking womb. It's a low bar, but in medieval marriage, you take what mercy you can find. We should sleep, he finally says. Tomorrow will be taxing, the sheet ceremony, the morning gift ceremony, breaking fast with both our families pretending they didn't hear everything. He seems as exhausted by the performance as you are. One thing, he adds as you settle carefully beside him. I sleep deeply and snore worse if it disturbs you. The adjoining chamber is yours, most nights. I won't mind if you retreat there after we've done our duty. A room of your own. Your heart leaps, space to breathe, to think, to exist without performing wifely submission. That's very kind, my lord. He waves off the gratitude. Kindness is letting you keep your own teeth. This is practicality. I need rest to manage my estates. You need rest to bear healthy children. We both benefit. As he settles back into snoring, you lie awake cataloguing everything you've learned. Your husband, old but not ancient, experienced but not cruel, practical but not heartless. The marriage, survivable if you're clever, deadly if you're not. The future, uncertain but not hopeless. You've gained a library, a separate chamber, and knowledge that he views you as slightly more than livestock. It's not the romantic songs version of marriage, but then again, those songs usually end before the wedding night. Reality continues into morning, into pregnancy, into the grinding daily challenge of surviving medieval wifehood. And you touch your belly, wondering if his seed has already taken root. If 9 months from now you'll face the same fate as his previous wives. But that's tomorrow's fear. Tonight, you're alive, legally wed, and learning the landscape of your new life. Lord Robert's snores shake the bed frame, but somehow they're less terrifying than silence would be. At least snoring husbands aren't making heirs. Dawn arrives with all the subtlety of a siege engine. The chamber door bursts open before the cock's crow fully fades, admitting what seems like half the castle. Your mother-in-law leads the charge, followed by the priest, your own mother, various female relatives, and, mortifyingly, the same midwives from yesterday's inspection. They've come for the sheets, that bloody proof of your transformation from maid to matron. You barely have time to pull the coverlet to your chin before Lady Margaret yanks it away with theatrical flourish. "Rise and witness," she proclaims, as if conducting a religious ceremony, which, in a way, she is. The cult of virginity has its own sacraments, and bloody sheets are the holiest of relics. Lord Robert groans and pulls a pillow over his head. Apparently exempt from this particular performance, the women converge on the bed like crows on carrion, examining the sheets with an intensity that would impress crime investigators. "Here," one aunt cries triumphantly, pointing to a rust-coloured stain. "And here," another adds. Finding a smaller spot, they discuss the blood's placement, quantity, and colour with the kind of detail usually reserved for wine tasting. Your mother catches your eye and nods almost imperceptibly. The chicken blood she provided wasn't needed after all. Sufficient proof of consummation, the older midwife declares. And you wonder what constitutes insufficient proof. A cousin once whispered about a bride whose sheets showed too little blood, leading to accusations of prior corruption. The marriage was annulled, the girl sent to a convent, her family disgraced, all for want of a few more drops of maiden's blood, or a mother clever enough to provide chicken backup. Father Benedict steps forward to bless the stained linens, sprinkling holy water while muttering Latin. The sheets will be displayed publicly, hung from the castle walls like a banner of victory. Later, they'll be carefully preserved. Some families keep such sheets for generations. Gruesome heirlooms of female sacrifice. You imagine future daughters-in-law being shown your blood as encouragement. "See, she survived. So can you." "Now for the morning gift," Lady Margaret announces, clapping her hands. "This is the part where Lord Robert proves his satisfaction with your performance. The size and value of the morning gift directly correlates to how pleased he is with his purchase. Too small, and everyone assumes you disappointed him. Too large, and they whisper about overcompensations or medieval social mathematics, where even generosity requires careful calculation. Lord Robert finally stirs, looking like death warmed over but managing to stand. A servant helps him into a robe while he rummages in a chest by the window. The room holds its breath. He produces a small leather box and hands it to you with surprising gentleness. "For my lady wife," he says formally, in recognition of the gift she has given me. Inside lies a gold ring set with a ruby the size of a quail's egg, surrounded by pearls. The room erupts in appropriate oohs and ahs. It's more than generous. It's extravagant. Your mother looks ready to faint with relief. Lady Margaret nods approvingly. The message is clear. Lord Robert is very satisfied with his investment. You slip the ring onto your finger, where it sits heavy as a shackle, beautiful as a chain. But the morning ceremonies aren't finished. Now comes the public display, where you must walk through the castle wearing your new status like a banner. They dress you in a gown specifically designed for this moment, cut to emphasize your new womanly status, in colors that announce your husband's house. Your hair, loose yesterday, gets bound up in a matron's coif. The transformation is complete, at least externally. The great hall fills with last night's guests, most looking worse for wear but determined to witness this final act. You enter on Lord Robert's arm, trying not to limp from last night's activities. Every eye tracks your movement, searching for signs of what? Tears? Shame? Evidence of brutal deflowering. Instead, you offer them serene smiles, playing the part of the satisfied bride. Breakfast becomes another performance. You must eat from Lord Robert's plate, drink from his cup, demonstrating unity and submission. He feeds you morsels of bread. You offer him sips of ale, all while the audience provides running commentary. She moves stiffly, Someone observes, "Well tumbled." Then another responds, causing general laughter, medieval privacy, and concept as mythical as unicorns. Your mother manages to sit beside you briefly. "You did well," she murmurs. "The ring is exceptional. He's pleased." As if your entire worth condensed into one night's endurance, measured in rubies and pearls. But you understand the subtext. A pleased husband means a safer life, fewer demands, perhaps even affection, or at least its medieval equivalent, benign neglect. The sheet ceremony reaches its climax as servants carry the stained linens outside. The entire household gathers in the courtyard to witness their hanging. Trumpets sound, actual trumpets, announcing to the world that Lord Robert has successfully claimed his bride's maidenhead somewhere in the village below. Peasants will hear those trumpets and know that another noble girl has been properly sacrificed to the marriage bed. You stand on the battlements, Lord Robert beside you, waving to the crowd like conquering heroes. The sheets flutter in the morning breeze like flags of surrender, which, in essence, they are. Your body's surrender to his ownership, signed in blood. The crowd cheers, throwing flower petals that get caught in the wind, swirling around the hanging sheets in a dance macabre. Smile wider. Lady Margaret hisses from behind. You're a blessed wife now, not a martyr. You stretch your lips further, wondering if martyrs at least got the comfort of knowing their suffering had spiritual purpose. Your suffering served only to transfer property and provide entertainment for bored nobility, though perhaps that's its own form of sacred duty in the feudal system. The physician approaches because apparently the humiliations aren't complete. He must formally examine you to ensure no lasting damage from the consummation, just a formality. He assures, though his eagerness suggests otherwise, you're led to a side chamber where he checks for excessive tearing, signs of internal injury, anything that might prevent future breeding. Medieval medical care, where your reproductive system matters more than your dignity. Healthy as a broodmare, he announces cheerfully, and you bite back the response that horses probably get more consideration. Lord Robert pays him with a small purse of silver, buying confirmation of your continued usefulness, the transaction complete. You're released back to the great hall for more celebration. The day drags endlessly. Guests offer increasingly creative congratulations, each finding new ways to reference last night's activities, and gifts pile up. Linens for your household, silver plates for your table, books of prayer for your spiritual guidance, because clearly you'll need extra divine intervention now. Your face hurts from smiling. Your body aches from everything else. But still, the performances continue. Finally, as afternoon shadows grow long, guests begin departing. Each farewell requires its own ritual. Kisses for the women, bows for the men, promises to visit your new household. Your father approaches last, looking uncomfortable. You've done the family proud, he says stiffly, not meeting your eyes. Translation: the alliance is secured, the dowry transferred, his duty as father complete. You curtsy perfectly, playing dutiful daughter one last time. As the castle slowly empties, you realize this is it. Your new life begins now. No more guests to perform for, no more ceremonies to endure. Just you, Lord Robert, and the endless days stretching ahead. The bloody sheets still flutter from the walls, but soon they'll be taken down, washed, preserved, evidence of your sacrifice converted into household linen. Tired? Lord Robert asks, noticing your exhaustion. When you nod, he surprises you again. Go rest. Tonight we dine privately. No more audiences. The kindness feels strange after so much public scrutiny. You curtsy gratefully and escape to your chambers. where finally, blessedly, you can drop the mask of the happy bride. Your new lady's maids wait to help you undress, but their knowing smirks make you dismiss them. Alone at last, you collapse onto the bed, a different bed. In your private chamber as promised, the sheets smell of lavender, not blood. Through the window, you can see those other sheets still waving, but from here, they look almost like ordinary laundry. Almost. Tomorrow, you'll begin learning to run a household, to be a proper wife, to navigate the complex politics of marriage. But for now, you allow yourself this moment of solitude, this brief respite between your old life and the new. The morning gift weighs heavy on your finger. Its ruby catching the light like drops of blood, beautiful chains for a beautiful cage. And you're learning to appreciate the decoration, if not the confinement. Your first week as Lady of Blackwater Castle teaches you that running a noble household is less about gracious hosting and more about preventing barely controlled chaos from exploding into actual disaster. You stand in the great hall at dawn, facing your assembled household staff, nearly 60 souls who regard you with expressions ranging from polite skepticism to barely veiled hostility. The steward, a thin man named Walter, who clearly worshipped Lord Robert's second wife, hands you a ring of keys heavy enough to brain someone. The household accounts. "My lady," he says, producing ledgers that smell of mildew and mouse droppings. The late Lady Eleanor kept them meticulously. Translation: you'll never measure up to a dead woman's perfection. You accept the books with outward calm, while internally calculating how quickly you can learn enough arithmetic to catch him skimming, because he's definitely skimming. That peculiar shine in his eyes isn't loyalty. Your days develop a rhythm that would exhaust a plough horse. Rise before dawn for private prayers, the only moment of solitude you'll get. Then immediately into battle. First, the kitchens, where cook and her army wage daily war over menus, supplies, and whose fault it is that the bread burned. You learn to mediate between cook's pride and reality's constraints. Yes, we need elaborate meals for status. No, we can't afford peacock every Tuesday. The pantry inventory, my lady. Your new clerk announces, and you discover medieval storage is essentially organized spoilage and barrels of salted meat that might be pork, or might be something that died under mysterious circumstances, grain stores that require constant vigilance against rats, mold, and light-fingered servants, wine cellars where the good bottles mysteriously evaporate while the vinegar multiplies. You implement a marking system that makes tampering obvious, earning Walter's deepest scowl. The laundry presents its own special hell, mountains of linens that need washing. From Lord Robert's braise, changed twice weekly whether needed or not, to the acres of bedding required for a castle full of guests, servants, and livestock, because yes, the good horses get blankets too. The laundresses work from dawn to dusk. Their hands roar from lye soap, singing bawdy songs that stop abruptly when you appear. My lady, the head laundress says carefully. The Lord's mother says we're using too much soap. Lady Margaret, you're learning, has opinions about everything despite officially retiring from household management. She haunts your days like a critical ghost, finding fault with your every decision. Too much soap in the laundry, too little salt in the meat, too many candles lit after dark. You smile and nod and quietly do things your way when she's not looking. Then there's the medical management. As lady of the house, you're responsible for everyone's health from the lowest scullery maid to Lord Robert himself. Your still room becomes a battlefield where you mix remedies your mother taught you, while the castle's ancient physician insists bloodletting cures everything from headaches to broken bones. When a stable boy comes in with a gashed arm, you clean and stitch it yourself while the physician mutters about humoral imbalance. Witchcraft, grumbles when the boy's arm heals cleanly. God's grace. You correct sweetly. Not mentioning the honey and wine mixture you used comes from a Moorish text your aunt smuggled from Spain, medieval medicine, where saving lives requires careful political navigation around male ego and religious orthodoxy. The household accounts prove Walter is indeed skimming, not dramatically. He's too clever for that. But a penny here, a farthing there, adding up to several pounds yearly. You don't confront him immediately. Instead, you implement improvements that accidentally make theft harder, double-checking deliveries, rotating who handles money, requiring 2 witnesses for large purchases. He knows you know. You know he knows you know. And a delicate détente emerges. Your mornings in Lord Robert's library become your salvation. Between wrestling with household chaos, you escape to wrestle with Latin texts instead. The medical manuscripts fascinate you. Detailed drawings of female anatomy that look nothing like reality, but reveal how physicians think women's bodies work. Apparently, the womb wanders around the body causing hysteria, which explains why they prescribe marriage and pregnancy for every female complaint. The fringe texts prove even more interesting. Hidden behind respectable religious volumes, you find books that shouldn't exist in a Christian household. One contains receipts for women's troubles that includes recipes for bringing on delayed courses and easing quickening bellies. Another discusses Arab astronomical observations about fertile and barren days. You memorize everything. Knowing such knowledge might save your life, Lord Robert occasionally joins you in the library, and these become surprisingly pleasant hours. He reads legal documents while you organize his collection, occasionally sharing interesting passages. Listen to this, he'll say, describing some medieval lawsuit over pig ownership that escalated to trial by combat. His dry commentary makes you laugh despite yourself. Who knew your elderly husband had a sense of humor hiding under all that wine and gravity? The social management exhausts you most. Noble neighbors visit constantly, each requiring appropriate hospitality. You learn to judge status by horse quality and servant quantity, adjusting your welcome accordingly. The Baron of Westfield gets the good wine and fresh rushes. The knight from Morton gets decent ale and last week's rushes turned. Everyone gets carefully calculated courtesy that maintains alliances without emptying your coffers. Your ladies-in-waiting require their own management. 3 noble girls sent to learn housewifery, while their fathers hunt for husbands. They giggle constantly, shirk duties creatively, and compete viciously for attention from visiting knights. You assign them tasks that keep them busy and visible, but not too tempting. No unsupervised herb garden visits, no solo trips to the wine cellar, definitely no midnight kitchen raids where stable boys lurk. My lady, one whines, must we really spin all afternoon? Yes, you tell her, because idle hands lead to scandal, and scandal leads to ruined reputations, and ruined reputations lead to convents or worse. They think you're strict. You're actually saving them from themselves and a world that will destroy them for one moment's indiscretion. The feast planning alone could occupy a full-time general. Every meal is politics disguised as hospitality. Who sits where? What gets served when? Which dishes honor or insult guests? It's chess played with roasted capons. You develop a system of subtle symbols, salt cellars positioned just so. Certain flowers meaning welcome or warning. Your household learns to read these signs, adjusting service accordingly. Between all this, you're expected to be visible, gracious, endlessly available, settling disputes between servants who feuded since before you were born, approving purchases you barely understand, pretending interest in Lady Margaret's endless critiques, smiling through exhaustion that makes your bones ache. This is noble womanhood, a performance that never ends. Just changes costumes between acts. Night brings blessed collapse into bed, usually your private chamber, since Lord Robert only requires companionship twice weekly, but even sleep offers no true rest. You dream of spoiled meat and missing pennies, of Lady Margaret's disapproval and Walter's calculating eyes. Sometimes you wake thinking you've heard the second wife's ghost checking your accounting. She probably did it better. Dead women always do. One evening, as you're reviewing tomorrow's feast preparations, Lord Robert appears in your chamber doorway. "You're doing well," he says simply. Better than I expected from one so young. It's the first direct praise you've received, and you're embarrassed by how much it means. The household runs smoother than it has in years. "Thank you, my lord." You manage, and he nods before retreating. It's a small victory in an endless war, but you'll take it. Tomorrow will bring new battles. Cook's temperament, Walter's schemes, Lady Margaret's criticisms, but tonight, you've earned your husband's approval and your household's grudging respect. You fall asleep, clutching that small triumph, knowing tomorrow you'll need every scrap of confidence to face another day of medieval household management. The keys to the castle weight your belt, each one opening another door to responsibility, complexity, and the grinding daily reality of being a noble wife. But at least they're your keys now. And that's a power worth the exhaustion. The pressure begins immediately after your monthly blood fails to arrive. Lady Margaret appears in your chambers like a hawk scenting prey, her eyes fixed on your midsection with unsettling intensity. "Have you bled?" she demands without preamble. When you shake your head, her face transforms with a satisfaction that makes your skin crawl. Finally, I was beginning to wonder if my son had married a barren field. Within hours, the entire castle knows, servants whisper in corners, your ladies giggle behind their hands, and suddenly everyone has an opinion about your womb and its contents. The physician arrives unbidden, armed with charts of planetary alignments and jars of suspicious liquids. "We must ensure the quickening takes proper hold," he announces. As if your body is a garden requiring his personal tending, the remedies begin immediately. You're fed a diet that would challenge a goat's digestion. Raw eggs mixed with wine at dawn, dried bull's pizzle ground into your soup, food so hot and dry they burn your throat, and the physician insists you eat sparrow brains for their generative properties. And when you gag, Lady Margaret holds your jaw shut until you swallow. "My previous daughters-in-law were too delicate," she says. "That's why they failed." Your beautiful morning rides end abruptly. Too much jostling disturbs the womb. The physician declares, walking is limited to gentle turns about the garden, which means shuffling in circles while everyone watches for signs of weakness. You're banned from lifting anything heavier than a prayer book, as if your arms connect directly to your uterus. The freedom of movement you'd barely tasted vanishes like morning mist. Sleep positions become regulated warfare. On your right side only. One midwife insists. No, the left protects the child. Another argues. You end up rotating like meat on a spit. Never comfortable. Always wrong according to someone. They prop pillows under your hips to keep the seed from escaping. A mental image that haunts your dreams. Medieval obstetrics, where superstition masquerades as science and comfort is heresy. The examinations grow invasive enough to make your wedding night seem private. The physician palpates your belly daily, checking for signs invisible to anyone but him. He sniffs your urine like wine, holding it to the light and making pronouncements about its clarity. Too pale, eat more meat. Too dark, less wine. Your bodily functions become public property, discussed over dinner with the casual tone of weather observations. For a son, Lady Margaret announces, producing a regimen that sounds like Torture's guidebook. You must wear iron keys against your skin, sleep with a knife under the mattress, and consume foods that promote masculine humors. Garlic features heavily, along with anything resembling male genitalia, cucumbers, leeks, suspiciously shaped roots. You're essentially eating a diet of phallic vegetables while wrapped in metal, praying for a penis to manifest in your womb. The fringe remedies border on witchcraft. Your Aunt Elisande sends a package containing items definitely not church-approved. A hare's foot to stroke across your belly, water collected under a full moon, and instructions for a ritual involving naked dancing that you definitely won't attempt, though desperation makes even blasphemy tempting when everyone treats your potential failure as personal insult. Lord Robert, at least, maintains distance from the medical circus. He inquires after your health with genuine concern, but doesn't hover like the others. Ignore my mother, he advises during one of your library sessions. She drove both previous wives to distraction with her remedies. Just eat what agrees with you and rest when tired. Practical advice from an impractical source. How can you rest when everyone monitors your every breath? The social pressure intensifies weekly. Noble ladies visit specifically to assess your condition, their eyes calculating behind false smiles. They share horror stories disguised as helpful anecdotes. My sister vomited blood for 3 months, then died delivering a monster with 2 heads. Or, Cousin Mary seemed healthy until the quickening stopped. The child rotted inside her for weeks. You smile and thank them for their concern, while mentally cataloguing which ones deserve poisoning. Your mother arrives for an extended visit, ostensibly to help, but really to manage the situation. She takes one look at your diet and immediately starts countermanding the physician. Sparrow brains? Absolute nonsense. You need proper food, not superstition. She smuggles you bread and cheese, conspiring with cook to hide nutrition inside the prescribed absurdities. A true ally in the war for your survival. The walking womb theory is complete rubbish, she whispers during one garden shuffle. I've birthed 6 living children and never once felt my womb wandering about looking for male heat. She shares real knowledge, which pains are normal, most, which signal danger, sharp ones low in the belly, how to tell false labor from true, information that might actually save your life rather than just complicate it. The quickening comes during week 16, a flutter like butterfly wings that makes you gasp during dinner. The hall erupts in celebration, as if you've announced victory in war, which, in a way, you have. A moving child proves your womb works. Lord Robert's seed is viable, and the marriage serves its purpose. Wine flows freely, except for you. Wine might overheat the baby, and even Walter the steward manages a genuine smile. But quickening brings new terrors. Now the child is real, not theoretical, and its movements remind you constantly of what's growing inside. Your body changes dramatically, breasts swelling beyond recognition, belly distending until walking becomes waddling. Stretch marks appear despite the mummy oil, mapping your transformation like battle scars. You're becoming unrecognizable. A vessel shaped by its contents, the remedies intensify. Eagle stones tied around your thighs to prevent miscarriage, prayers to St. Margaret written on parchment and sewn into your clothes, magnets placed strategically to draw the child downward at the proper time. You're a walking charm bracelet of medieval medical confusion, clanking with amulets and reeking of protective herbs. For easy labor, the midwife says, producing a drink that smells like death fermented in a chamber pot. It's made from powdered amber, crushed pearls, and something she calls woman's friend, but won't identify further. You drink it because refusing would bring lectures about selfishness and failing your duty. It tastes exactly as bad as it smells, and produces nothing but violent stomach cramps. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed these remedies, or simply endured them for social harmony, sitting there, belly distended, wrapped in iron, and stinking of garlic. You understand it's both. You don't believe sparrow brains promote sons, but you believe in hedging your bets when death stalks every birth. Faith and desperation make strange bedfellows, especially when you're the bed. Your world shrinks to the confines of castle walls and the universe beneath your skin. Every kick is analyzed. Every quiet moment sparks panic. Too much movement might mean distress. Too little could signal death. You lie awake feeling for motion, praying to every saint you can name, bargaining with God for safe delivery. The child rolls and tumbles, oblivious to the terror it causes. Just 2 more months, your mother soothes. But 2 months feels like 2 lifetimes, when each day brings new discomfort and fresh fear. Your back aches constantly, your ankles swell to twice their size, and breathing becomes a conscious effort. This is the reality birth ballads never mention. The grinding daily misery of growing another human inside your own body, while everyone watches and judges and interferes. You understand now why your predecessors died, not just from the physical trauma of birth, but from the exhaustion of enduring pregnancy under such scrutiny. Every symptom becomes public discussion, every discomfort a failing. You're not allowed bad days or complaints, or even the basic dignity of suffering in private. Medieval pregnancy, a performance where the stakes are life and death, and the audience never goes home. But still the child moves, strong and insistent, demanding space in a body already pushed to its limits. And despite everything, the ridiculous remedies, the invasive examinations, the constant terror, you find yourself talking to it during quiet moments, promising survival for you both, whispering fierce love to the stranger beneath your skin, because maybe that's the real remedy. Stubborn determination to beat the odds that killed too many women before you. The pains start during matins, pulling you from sleep with their intensity. You've been feeling tightenings for days, but this is different. A deep, grinding sensation like millstones crushing grain. Except you're the grain. Your water breaks in a warm gush that soaks through the mattress. And suddenly, the theoretical becomes horrifyingly real. The child you've carried for 9 months has decided tonight is the night to attempt its violent escape. Send for the midwife. You gasp to the nearest servant, who flees with gratifying speed. Within minutes, your chamber transforms into a battlefield. Marjorie, the midwife, arrives with her assistants, armed with cloths, herbs, and expressions of grim determination. Lady Margaret sweeps in behind them, already issuing orders. Your mother appears last, slightly out of breath, carrying the birthing stool that's been waiting in storage like an instrument of torture. They strip you efficiently, replacing your sodden night shift with a loose gown that provides access for their ministrations. The birthing stool gets positioned near the fire, a wooden contraption with a U-shaped seat designed to let gravity assist where prayers might fail. You eye it with the same enthusiasm you'd show a gallows, knowing that's where you'll spend the next unknown hours fighting for your life. Walk, Marjorie commands, and you obey, pacing the chamber while contractions roll through you like tide waves. Each one builds slowly, crests in blinding pain, then recedes, leaving you gasping in the brief respites. The women follow your movements, supporting when you stumble, encouraging when you cry. This is women's work, ancient and terrible. And suddenly, you understand why men are barred from birthing chambers. They'd faint at the first real scream. The physician attempts entry, but gets forcibly ejected by Marjorie. No men, she states flatly. His theories killed the last two ladies. My hands have delivered hundreds. The physician splutters about humoral imbalances and planetary alignments, but your mother bars the door with impressive authority. My daughter births with women's wisdom, not men's foolishness, she declares. And that settles that. Hours pass in a blur of pain and exhaustion. They feed you honey for strength, wine for courage, and various herbal concoctions for purposes you don't question. One tastes of pepper and makes your whole body burn. Another numbs your tongue but does nothing for the pain elsewhere. The contractions strengthen, lengthening until they seem to merge into one endless agony that whites out thought. To the stool, Marjorie finally announces, and they guide you to that wooden throne. The position feels wrong, exposed, vulnerable, fighting gravity rather than working with it. But this is how noble women birth, upright and dignified, not squatting like peasants, though dignity becomes meaningless when you're screaming through gritted teeth, sweat pouring down your face like rain. Your mother kneels before you, gripping your hands with strength that surprises you. Look at me, she commands. Not the pain, not the fear, just me. Her eyes become your anchor as the urge to push overwhelms everything else. Marjorie crouches between your spread legs, her experienced hands checking progress. The head comes, she announces with satisfaction. Dark hair, like the father. Pushing is simultaneously relief and agony. Your body knows this ancient dance, muscles engaging without conscious thought. But knowing and doing occupy different worlds when you're being split apart from the inside. You bear down with force that should move mountains, screaming prayers and curses in equal measure. The women chant encouragements that blur into meaningless sound. Again, Marjorie commands, and you push past exhaustion into some primal space where pain becomes power. The pressure is unbearable, impossible, surely designed to kill rather than create life. You think of Lord Robert's two dead wives and wonder if this is how they felt in their final moments, betrayed by bodies that promised life but delivered death. Then, suddenly, release. The head emerges in a rush of fluid and blood, followed quickly by shoulders, body, legs. Marjorie catches the infant with practiced ease, immediately clearing its mouth and nose for one eternal heartbeat. Silence. Then a cry, weak but unmistakable, and your world reorganizes around that sound. A son, Marjorie announces, lifting the squalling, blood-slick creature for inspection. Small but perfect, they place him on your chest while dealing with the afterbirth. This warm, alien weight that somehow came from inside you. He's wrinkled, cone-headed from the birth canal, covered in white vernix and your blood, objectively hideous, subjectively, the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. His tiny fingers grip yours with surprising strength, and you understand viscerally why women risk this repeatedly. But the drama isn't over. The afterbirth must be delivered, examined, burned with proper ceremony to prevent witches from using it for evil. More contractions, mercifully lighter. Expel this temporary organ that sustained your son. Marjorie examines it carefully, checking that it's whole, complete. She pronounces, no pieces retained to cause fever. One danger past, dozens more awaiting him. The bleeding concerns them, normal blood loss, Marjorie assures. But they pack cloths between your legs and massage your belly to encourage the womb to contract. The pain makes you cry out, startling the baby into fresh wails. They take him briefly to wash and swaddle while tending your torn flesh. Marjorie's needle flashes in the firelight as she repairs damage with neat stitches. You bite down on leather, tasting memories of your wedding night. You did well, your mother says, smoothing hair from your forehead. He's small but strong, like you. You want to laugh at being called strong while feeling shattered, but tears come instead. The overwhelming reality crashes over you. You survived. He survived. But this is just the beginning. Now comes the true test. Keeping him alive through infancy's lethal gauntlet, they return him cleaned and swaddled. A tight bundle with only his face visible. His eyes, when they briefly open, are dark blue-grey, unfocused but somehow ancient. You touch his cheek, marveling at skin softer than silk, at the miracle of fingers smaller than your thumbnail. This is what all the pain produced: new life, continuation of bloodlines, your husband's heir, your heart walking outside your body. Lord Robert arrives as dawn breaks, looking haggard. They've kept him updated throughout the night, each scream likely audible in his chambers. He approaches cautiously, as if entering a foreign land. "My son," he asks, and you nod. Lifting the bundle for his inspection, his face transforms with relief and something deeper. Genuine joy? He touches the baby's head with one finger, gentle as butterfly wings. "He's perfect," he says simply, as is his mother. The unexpected praise makes you tear up again. Exhaustion and hormones creating emotional chaos. He stays only briefly, kissing your forehead before retreating to spread the news. Church bells will ring, announcing the successful birth of an heir. Celebrations will commence while you lie here, leaked, empty, and aching. The wet nurse arrives, a robust woman with milk already flowing from her own recent birth. You're expected to hand over your son immediately, letting another woman nourish what your body created. "It's healthier," Lady Margaret insists. "Your milk is too thin, too influenced by the trauma." You want to protest but lack energy. Besides, noble women don't nurse. It interferes with returning to wifely duties and delays the next pregnancy. Watching another woman put your child to breast tears something inside you, but she's gentle, experienced, and he latches eagerly. His survival matters more than your feelings. You'll have to mother him in other ways, through education, protection, preparing him for a world that consumes the weak. For now, you've done your part by bringing him safely into existence. The exhaustion hits like a wall. You've been awake over 20 hours, fighting the hardest battle of your life. They change your bedding, wash you again, apply healing salves to places you don't want to think about. Everything hurts with spectacular variety: sharp pains, dull aches, burning sensations that suggest your body's revenge for its ordeal. "Sleep," your mother commands. The churching will wait 40 days. For now, rest and heal. They dose you with poppy wine, strong enough to blur the edges of pain. As consciousness fades, you hear your son's satisfied suckling, the women's quiet conversations, normal life continuing around your small miracle. You've passed through death's shadow and emerged victorious. Tomorrow, you'll face the challenges of keeping him alive, of recovering your strength, of eventually enduring this again. But tonight, you're a warrior resting after battle. You've given Lord Robert his heir, secured your position, and proven those breeding hips weren't false advertising. The ruby morning gift gleams on your finger, earned 10 times over by tonight's performance. You've paid the marriage debt in blood and pain and produced a living receipt. Welcome to motherhood, medieval style, where survival is victory, and victory means doing it all again. Your churching ceremony marks the official end of your 40-day confinement, and with it comes your re-entry into castle society, specifically, the viper's nest of noble women's politics. You process into the chapel wearing a new gown that almost disguises how your body has changed, carrying a candle that supposedly represents your purification from the stain of childbirth, because apparently creating life makes you spiritually dirty, medieval logic at its finest. The other noble wives welcome you back with smiles sharp as daggers and words honeyed with poison. How wonderful that you survived. Lady Pemberton coos, her tone suggesting disappointment, and producing a son first try. Though he is rather small, isn't he? My boys were all twice that size. The comparisons begin immediately. Whose labour was longer? Whose baby bigger? Whose recovery faster? You're playing a game where the rules change constantly, and losing means social death. You quickly learn that information is currency in this feminine economy, and gossip travels faster than plague. Within days, you know that Lady Westford's husband keeps a mistress in London, that the Countess of Blackmore might be barren, 3 years married, no quickening, and that young Lady Alice definitely did not ride to her wedding, a maiden despite the bloody sheets. In return, you trade carefully selected truths about your own household, maintaining the delicate balance of sharing enough to belong but not enough to be vulnerable. The real power lies with the widows. Lady Margaret leads this faction, controlling vast wealth and owing obedience to no man. She holds court in the solar, dispensing advice and judgment, while her companions, all widowed, all wealthy, nod agreement to. Marriage is woman's burden, she pronounces, but widowhood is her reward. They wear their black like armour, their independence like crowns. You study them carefully, seeing your potential future in their carefully managed freedoms. Your mother's lessons about female networks prove invaluable. When Lord Pemberton raises taxes on your salt production, a whispered word to his wife about his London arrangements resolves the issue within days. When a border dispute threatens your Western manor, you happen to mention it while embroidering with the sheriff's wife. Amazing how legal matters clarify when wives share their concerns over needlework. The birth of your son elevates your status but also makes you a target. Other wives, with only daughters, eye you with naked envy. Those still trying to conceive treat you like a fertility talisman, touching your sleeves for luck and pestering you about conception secrets. You share the harmless superstitions, moon phases, dietary restrictions, but keep your mother's real knowledge close. Information is power, and power shared is power halved. The gossip network extends beyond castle walls through an elaborate system of visiting, letters, and accidentally overheard servant conversations. You learn to read between lines of polite correspondence. I hope your husband's health improves means, I heard he's drinking himself to death. Your daughter grows beautiful translates to, she's reached marriageable age and I have sons. Every interaction requires careful decoding. Church becomes another battlefield disguised as worship. Seating arrangements announce social hierarchies more clearly than heralds' trumpets. You've earned a place in the second row through successful childbirth. But Lady Pemberton contests it, claiming her 3 sons outrank your single heir. The priest attempts mediation, but even he knows better than to truly cross the noble wives. You keep your seat through strategic mention of your husband's tithes. The actual power dynamics fascinate you. Men might rule legally, but women control the social fabric that makes rule possible. A lord who offends the wives finds his halls empty of guests, his children unable to secure good marriages, his very legitimacy questioned through carefully orchestrated whisper campaigns. You watch Lady Margaret destroy a knight's reputation with 3 well-placed comments about his unfortunate habits. He leaves for the Crusades within a month. Your own position remains precarious. One living son doesn't secure a dynasty. Infant mortality looms like a spectre over every mother's joy. The other wives watch your boy for signs of weakness, calculating odds like merchants at market. When he catches a mild fever, the concerned visits multiply, each woman mentally measuring your chambers for their own furniture. You smile and serve wine and silently curse their ghoulish interest. The fringe elements of female society prove most interesting. There's a network of wise women, herbalists, and midwives who operate just below noble notice. They share knowledge. The church condemns, but every woman needs. Moon tea for preventing conception, tansy for bringing on delayed courses, birthwort for easing labor. You cultivate these connections carefully, knowing they might save your life when the physician's bloodletting fails. Lady Alice, the one with questionable virginity, becomes an unexpected ally, young and desperate to secure her position before her husband discovers the truth. She needs your social protection. In exchange, she shares intelligence gathered from her uniquely vulnerable position. Through her, you learn which husbands beat their wives, which wives take lovers, who's genuinely pious and who just performs it. Knowledge accumulates like compound interest. The seasonal social calendar provides structure for these political maneuvers. Spring brings Easter court, where marriage negotiations commence amid religious ceremony. Summer means progress between estates, each stop an opportunity to strengthen alliances or accidentally slight enemies. Harvest celebrations allow for strategic generosity, sharing your bounty with those whose friendship you need. Winter traps everyone together, making castle politics inescapable. You develop your own tools of influence. Your embroidery circle becomes an intelligence-gathering operation that would impress spy masters. Your herb garden provides remedies that create grateful allies. Your carefully managed correspondence network spans 3 counties, each letter carrying multiple layers of meaning. Even your son becomes political capital, his health, beauty, and precociousness reflected as your success. The childbirth stories women share reveal the brutal mathematics of medieval motherhood. Lady Westford, 5 births, 3 living children. The Countess of Morton, 8 pregnancies, 2 sons surviving to adulthood. Your own mother-in-law, 9 births, 6 children reaching majority. They discuss dead babies with the same casual tone used for failed harvests. Unfortunate but expected losses in the agricultural economy of women's bodies. But between the politics and careful maneuvering, genuine friendships form. Late-night conversations over wine reveal shared fears, common struggles, unexpected kindnesses. Lady Joan, initially your rival, becomes your closest confidant after you help her through a difficult miscarriage. Together, you navigate the complexities of marriages to older men, the terror of pregnancy, the joy and exhaustion of motherhood. The widow's network takes particular interest in you as Lord Robert's health declines. They don't wish him dead, not exactly, but they prepare you for possibilities. Legal advice disguised as casual conversation, financial management tips shared over embroidery. Stories of their own transformations from wives to widows, from property to proprietors. You file every piece of information away, hoping not to need it soon, but knowing hope doesn't prevent necessity. Your days fill with this complex dance of alliance and rivalry, friendship and manipulation. Morning Mass, where you perform piety while cataloguing who sits where. Afternoon socializing, where compliments carry barbs and gifts come with obligations. Evening correspondence, each letter a move in multiple simultaneous chess games. It's exhausting, intricate, and absolutely essential for survival. Because this is the real education noble girls need but never receive formally. How to build networks that protect your children when fathers die. How to accumulate influence that substitutes for legal power. How to navigate between competing interests while maintaining your own. Your embroidery improves slowly, but your ability to manipulate social fabric develops with stunning speed. One evening, as you put your son to bed, the wet nurse's duty, but you claim these moments anyway, you realize you've become exactly what you once observed with naive horror, a political player in silk gowns, trading in whispers and implications, the transformation from innocent bride to seasoned wife complete. You understand your mother's wedding night advice differently now. Yes, submit when you must, but between submissions lies vast territory for female power. You kiss your son's forehead, this tiny heir whose existence transformed you from property to player. Tomorrow brings fresh battles. Lord Pemberton's wife needs humbling. The steward requires watching. Your husband's health demands attention. But tonight, you're a general reviewing successful campaigns, planning future victories. The gossip network hums with information. Your alliances hold firm, and your son breathes steadily in healthy sleep. Welcome to the real Game of Thrones, where women play with different pieces but for identical stakes. Survival, power, and the hope of outliving the men who rule them. Lord Robert's death comes on a Tuesday, which seems inappropriately mundane for such a momentous event. He'd been declining for months, the wine finally overwhelming his liver, his breath rattling like dried peas in a pod. You'd spent the night by his bedside, holding his hand as he drifted between consciousness and delirium, muttering about his first wife and apologizing for things you didn't understand. When dawn broke, he simply stopped breathing, as quietly as a candle being snuffed. The transformation begins before his body cools. You send for Father Benedict to perform last rites, but more importantly, you dispatch trusted servants to secure the important things, the treasury keys, the estate documents, his seal. Years of watching Lady Margaret taught you that widowhood's first hours determine its success. By the time the priest arrives, you've already hidden the gold and locked away anything your brother-in-law might claim. My lady. Walter the steward appears, and his tone has shifted completely. Where once he barely concealed disdain, now there's wary respect. You hold the keys, control the accounts, and most importantly, have a living son who inherits everything. Shall I send word to Lord Edmund, Lord Robert's brother, circling indeed like the vulture your late husband predicted? Yes, you reply calmly, but not too quickly. The roads are treacherous this season. The widow's weeds feel like liberation dressed as mourning, black silk and linen. Yes, but cut to your specifications for the first time. No more consulting husbands about hemlines or necklines. The veil particularly pleases you, hiding your expressions while allowing you to observe everything. Medieval widowhood, where grief's costume grants more freedom than joy's ever did. Your son, now Lord William at barely 3 years old, doesn't understand why Papa won't wake up. You hold him during the vigil, letting him touch his father's cold hand, explaining death in terms a child might grasp. Papa has gone to live with the angels. You whisper, but he left you his castle and his name. William nods solemnly, then asks if the angels have toys. The innocence breaks your heart. He has no idea how many people would happily see him dead to claim his inheritance. Lady Margaret sweeps in like an avenging angel. But for once, your allies. Her son is dead, but her grandson lives, and she'll destroy anyone who threatens that legacy. Edmund will challenge everything. She warns. He's already spreading rumors that the boy isn't Robert's true son. The accusation should shock you, but you've learned to expect the worst from men who want power. together. You prepare for war fought with laws instead of swords. The funeral becomes your first public performance as widow. You balance grief with strength, mourning with authority. Too many tears suggest weakness ripe for exploitation. Too few imply you're glad he's dead. You're not. He was kinder than most. You walk the knife's edge perfectly, supported by William's small hand in yours. The image, grieving widow, fatherless heir, tells a story that even Edmund can't contradict effectively. But Edmund tries. He arrives with a lawyer and documents challenging William's legitimacy. The great hall fills with tension as accusations fly. You counter with your own weapons. Witness testimonies from the midwives. The bloody sheets, thank God for medieval record-keeping. Documented evidence of consummation. The court of public opinion matters as much as legal arguments. And you play it masterfully, my lords. You address the assembled nobility with quiet dignity. I stand before you not just as Lord Robert's widow, but as mother to his rightful heir. Would you let a grasping brother steal from a child? Would you reward greed over legitimate succession? Murmurs of agreement ripple through the crowd. Edmund realizes too late that attacking a young widow and small child plays poorly with audiences. The legal battles drag on for months. But you were prepared. Those boring library sessions studying property law now pay dividends. You know exactly which documents matter, what witnesses to call, how to frame arguments for maximum sympathy. Your network of noble wives provides crucial support. Their husbands pressure judges. Their testimonies confirm your character. Their presence at court lends legitimacy. Victory comes wrapped in parchment and sealed with royal approval. William's inheritance is confirmed. Your widow's portion secured. And Edmund banished to his own estates with dire warnings about further challenges. You stand in the great hall, where you once endured wedding feasts and realize it's truly yours now. Well, William's technically, but a 3-year-old can't exactly manage estates. The real freedom shocks you with its scope. You can travel without permission, speak without censoring, make decisions without consultation. That first morning when you simply decided to ride without asking anyone feels revolutionary. Your household, once skeptical of a young bride, now depends on your judgment. You promote based on merit rather than tradition, shocking everyone by making the kitchen maid your personal secretary because she can read and count better than Walter. Financial control proves intoxicating. Those account books Walter thought you didn't understand. You audit them thoroughly, discovering years of systematic theft rather than prosecute. You offer him a choice. Work honestly under your direct supervision or face public exposure. He chooses survival, becoming paradoxically loyal now that you hold his secrets. Medieval management. Sometimes blackmail works better than justice. Your days reshape around actual interests rather than wifely duties. The library becomes your sanctuary where you read texts previously forbidden. Medical treatises about women's bodies that actually make sense. Astronomical observations that challenge church doctrine. Accounts of female rulers from history. Knowledge flows freely now, unfiltered by masculine gatekeeping. The other widows welcome you formally into their ranks with a ceremony that feels ancient and sacred. Lady Margaret presides, presenting you with a black veil that belonged to her own mother-in-law. 4 husbands that woman outlived, she says approvingly, died richer than most lords. They share secrets of widowcraft, how to appear helpless while exercising power, which lawyers respect female clients, ways to protect your wealth from fortune-hunting suitors, because suitors appear immediately, drawn by your youth and wealth like flies to honey, knights accidentally encountering you on rides, wealthy merchants offering partnership opportunities that somehow require marriage, even a duke's younger son, though he retreats quickly when you sweetly inquire about his debts. You reject them all with practiced courtesy, claiming devotion to your late husband's memory, while actually devoted to your freedom. Managing William's inheritance requires delicate balancing. You rule in his name, but for your own purposes. Always conscious that someday he'll claim what you're building. You hire tutors who'll educate him properly. Not just warfare and estate management, but languages, mathematics, even basic medicine. If you can't guarantee living to guide him to adulthood, you can at least ensure he's prepared for whatever comes. The gossip network. Once your battlefield becomes your intelligence service, information flows to you from 3 counties, filtered through the widow's network into actionable intelligence, and when a neighboring lord considers challenging your borders, you know before he tells his own wife. When disease threatens, you hear early enough to close your gates. Knowledge plus authority equals power you never imagined possessing. Some nights, lying alone in the bed where you once endured Lord Robert's attentions, you feel guilt, not for his death, that was God's timing, but for how little you mourn him. He was kinder than most, never beat you, gave you a son and eventual freedom. But you can't manufacture grief you don't feel. Instead, you pray for his soul and promise to raise William well. Surely that matters more than false tears. Your mother visits, pride glowing in her eyes. You've done well, she says simply, watching you preside over a state court with easy authority, better than I dared hope. You think of that terrified girl on her wedding night, being examined like livestock, and marvel at the transformation. Pain and blood bought this freedom, but the price seems fair now. The fringe historians often ask why medieval widows rarely remarried quickly despite pressure. Living your new reality provides the answer. Why surrender control to another husband when you can rule independently? Why risk death in more childbirths when your heir already exists? Why trade freedom for the dubious protection of marriage when you've learned to protect yourself? As autumn turns to winter, you stand on the battlements where your bloody sheets once hung. Now your own banner flies, the widow's arms that announce your authority. Below, the estate thrives under your management. Your son plays safely in the courtyard, guarded by men loyal to you. Not just his name. You wear black but feel more colourful than ever. Constrained by law but liberated by circumstance. This is widowhood's great secret. It's not about mourning but about becoming. You're no longer daughter, wife, or property. You're a person with power, wealth, and choices. The medieval world still limits women, but widows slip through cracks in the system, exploiting loopholes written by men who never imagined female independence. Tomorrow brings fresh challenges. Edmund still schemes. William needs protecting. The estates require constant management. But tonight, you're simply a woman standing free, owing obedience to no man, living proof that sometimes the best thing a husband can do for his wife is die at the right time. Lord Robert gave you a son, a position, and eventually, gloriously, his absence. You whisper a prayer of genuine gratitude for the first time since his death, not for losing him, but for surviving to see this day. The widow's weeds rustle in the wind like wings, and you spread your arms wide, embracing the cold air and endless possibility. You've graduated from the marriage bed to something far better, a life entirely your own. The candlelight flickers across your face as you sit in the solar, teaching your daughter Eleanor the secrets that will help her survive. She's 15 now, the same age you were when you married Lord Robert, and tomorrow she'll wed a baron's son from Northumbria, your son William, now 20 and strong. Doesn't understand why you've spent months preparing his sister with more than embroidery lessons, But you remember your own wedding night terror and refuse to send Eleanor into marriage blind. Men will tell you that women's knowledge is gossip and superstition. You say, producing the leather journal you've kept hidden for 20 years, but this book contains everything I've learned about surviving as a noble wife. Guard it with your life and add your own discoveries. Someday, pass it to your daughter. Eleanor takes the journal reverently, understanding the weight of generations in her hands. Inside, you've documented everything. Which herbs prevent conception and which encourage it. How to recognize trustworthy midwives. Legal loopholes that protect women's property. Signs that indicate a husband's character before marriage. The remedies that actually work versus those that merely comfort anxious minds. Networks of women across 3 kingdoms who'll help a sister in need. It's a survival manual disguised as household notes. Your great-aunt Elisande taught me that knowledge is women's true dowry. You continue, showing Eleanor the coded symbols you use for dangerous information. The church condemns much of what we need to know, so we hide wisdom in receipt books and prayer journals. Learn to read between lines. When a woman writes about encouraging roses to bloom, she might mean encouraging monthly courses to flow. The marriage chest sits open between you, packed with more than linens. Hidden in false bottoms are vials of almond oil for easing first encounters, packets of herbs for various women's needs, and coins sewn into shift hems, running away money if needed. You've included books disguised as devotionals, their margins filled with medical knowledge, everything a girl needs to transform into a survivor. Eleanor listens intently as you explain the harsh mathematics. Of my 6 cousins who married, 4 died in childbirth. I survived 6 pregnancies, 3 living children, 2 miscarriages, 1 stillborn. Your father was kinder than most, but never forget that kindness in men is relative to their capacity for cruelty. Even good husbands see wives as property first, people second. You teach her the subtle arts of household management, not just accounting and servant supervision, but how to build loyalty that outlasts a husband's life. Your steward will try to cheat you. Let him, a little, while you document everything's. Knowledge of his crimes becomes power over him. Better a controllable thief than an unknown enemy. Cynical advice, but the world that receives women offers no room for naive trust. About the wedding night, you say, and Eleanor blushes but doesn't look away. You remember your mother's fumbling explanations and vow to do better. You speak frankly about physical realities, about pain and blood and the strange intimacies of marriage beds, about how to endure what must be endured while protecting the spirit within, about finding small rebellions, a separate chamber, books, female friendships that make submission bearable. The network of wives you've cultivated over decades will embrace Eleanor. You've made sure of it. Letters of introduction wait in her chest, each one connecting her to women who understand the sisterhood of survival. Lady Catherine in York runs a lying-in house that saved countless women. Dame Margot in London knows lawyers who actually respect widows' rights. Countess Isabella has 3 unmarried sons, if your first husband proves unsuitable. Dark humor, but women's laughter often carries undertones of strategy. You share the code words women use. Taking the waters means seeking help for unwanted pregnancy. Visiting shrine suggests escape from an abusive husband. Herb garden exchanges indicate sharing prohibited knowledge. An entire language exists beneath polite correspondence, invisible to men who dismiss women's letters as domestic trivia. Eleanor practices the phrases, understanding their life-saving potential. Most importantly, you say, grasping her hands, remember that widowhood is the goal, not your husband's death, wishing that brings bad karma, but surviving until God calls him home. Every pregnancy weathered, every year endured, brings you closer to freedom. I've been a widow now longer than I was a wife, and these have been my best years. Eleanor nods, wise beyond her years from watching your example. Will I be happy? Mother, she asks quietly. You consider lying, offering comfort, but she deserves truth. Happiness in marriage is rare and usually accidental. Aim for contentment, safety, and purpose. Find joy in children, in friendships, in small victories. Save happiness for widowhood, when you can claim it without permission. The conversation continues late into the night. You share everything: strategies for managing violent husbands, ways to space pregnancies, how to recognize which household members will aid escape if needed, the location of convents that accept runaway wives, which saints actually seem to answer prayers: Margaret for childbirth, Bridget for protection, Wilgefortis for escape from cruel husbands, though that last one requires growing a beard, so perhaps just metaphorical. Men write histories. You tell her as dawn approaches. They record battles and successions, treating women as footnotes to great events. But we have our own history, past mother to daughter, aunt to niece, midwife to labouring woman. Every piece of knowledge shared is a small rebellion against a world that prefers us ignorant. You give her your blessing, different from the church's version. May you survive your wedding night, endure your marriage bed, birth living children, and outlive your husband by decades. May you find sisters wherever you go, wisdom in unexpected places, and freedom in whatever form it comes. May your daughters inherit a better world, though we both know they won't. Eleanor embraces you, tears flowing freely. Tomorrow she'll perform the blushing bride, but tonight she's just your daughter. Afraid but armed with knowledge, you hold her close, remembering your own mother's arms the night before everything changed. The cycle continues, but perhaps each generation breaks it a little more. Later, alone in your study, you add final entries to your own journal. Notes for future generations who'll need these secrets. You write about Lord Robert's unexpected gentleness, about friends who became sisters, about the bone-deep satisfaction of outliving those who controlled you, about how widowhood tastes like wine after a lifetime of water, intoxicating, dangerous, worth every risk. You pen instructions for your funeral, insisting on testimonies from the women you've helped rather than standard prayers. Let them speak of wives sheltered, birth survived, knowledge shared. Let the church frown at unseemly female celebration. You'll be past caring, and the living need hope more than the dead need propriety. The candle burns low as you seal the journal, adding it to the collection hidden in the library's secret compartment. Someday, historians might argue whether medieval women truly suffered under such restrictions. They'll debate demographics and legal structures, missing the crucial evidence written in blood, tears, and careful cipher between recipe ingredients. But your daughters will know the truth. Passed hand to hand across centuries, they'll understand that every medieval woman who survived to tell her story was a small miracle of endurance, that behind every great lord stood a wife who probably saved his estate through careful management while praying for his timely death. That convents filled with women seeking God but finding freedom from marriage beds. You think of that terrified 15-year-old girl, standing naked while strangers verified her virginity. She couldn't imagine becoming you, widow, mother, keeper of secrets, teacher of survival. But here you are, silver-haired and straight-backed, living proof that sometimes the powerless inherit power through sheer endurance. Tomorrow, Eleanor begins her own journey through marriage's trials. You've done what you can to prepare her, arming her with knowledge your mother could only hint at. Perhaps her daughter will need less armor. Though you doubt it, the world changes slowly, and women's bodies remain the battlefield where dynastic wars are fought. But tonight, in this moment between your daughter's childhood and her marriage, you allow yourself satisfaction. You've survived everything. Medieval marriage could inflict inspection, consummation, pregnancy, birth, submission, widowhood. You've built networks that save lives, preserve knowledge the church would burn, raise children who understand that women are people, not property. The night wind carries the sound of revelry from the great hall, where men celebrate tomorrow's property transfer. Let them feast and joke and plan Eleanor's life. You've given her tools they can't imagine, weapons they'd never recognize, and she'll smile and submit and survive, adding her own chapters to the great unwritten history of women's resistance. You blow out the candle and make your way to bed, joints creaking with age but spirit undaunted. Tomorrow brings tears and transfers, blood and binding, but also continuity. Another girl armed with secrets, another wife learning to survive, another potential widow preparing for freedom. The cycle continues. Yes, but each turn of the wheel grinds away a little more of the prison, and perhaps that's enough. Not revolution, but erosion. Wearing down patriarchy's walls one whispered secret at a time, you fall asleep smiling, dreaming of daughters yet unborn who'll inherit a world where marriage isn't a death sentence, and widowhood isn't the only freedom. Until then, the knowledge passes on, woman to woman, generation to generation, an unbroken chain of survival forged in bedchambers and birthing stools, and the secret history continues, written in women's bodies but preserved in their whispers, and that, more than any lord's chronicle, is the true story of medieval marriage, not what was done to women, but what they did to survive it. The candle has burned low, and the castle settles into deep silence around you. Through your window, you can see the first hints of dawn painting the sky a gentle rose, the same color as the ribbons in Eleanor's wedding dress. Your voice has grown soft and drowsy as you've shared these tales of medieval womanhood, each story flowing into the next like streams joining a great river of memory. You pull your blankets closer, feeling the weight of all those centuries pressing gently down like a comfortable quilt. The terrified young bride, the exhausted new mother, the strategic widow, they all drift through your thoughts now like ghosts made of mist and moonlight, but they're peaceful ghosts, their struggles transformed into wisdom, their pain into power passed down through generations of careful whispers. The stones of the castle seem to hum with the memories of all those women who walked these halls, examining tables and birthing stools, wedding feasts and funeral vigils, the endless cycle of submission and survival that slowly, gradually, carved out spaces of freedom. Your breathing deepens as you think of Eleanor tomorrow, armed with knowledge her great-great-grandmothers could only dream of sharing openly. Perhaps that's the real victory, not the dramatic overthrowing of systems, but the quiet accumulation of wisdom, the patient teaching of daughters, the careful preservation of knowledge that helps each generation suffer a little less than the last. Your eyelids grow heavy as you imagine all those medieval women settling into sleep after their own long days of managing households, surviving husbands, protecting children, and somehow finding moments of joy between the struggles. The morning birds begin their gentle songs outside your window, but you're already drifting toward dreams. In them, you see Eleanor strong and wise, teaching her own daughter someday. You see the networks of women spreading like spider silk across kingdoms, invisible but unbreakable. You see widows walking free, wives finding dignity, daughters approaching marriage with knowledge instead of terror. Sleep wraps around you like the softest veil, carrying you away from the harsh realities of medieval marriage into a place where all those brave women rest together, their battles finished, their wisdom preserved, their daughters prepared. The last candle gutters out, but the light they kindled continues burning, passed hand to hand across the centuries, never quite extinguished no matter how hard the world tries. And so you sleep, surrounded by the whispers of grandmothers and the hopes for granddaughters, cradled in the great chain of women's endurance that stretches back through time and forward into tomorrow. Your breathing slows to match the ancient rhythm of the stones themselves, and peace settles over the castle like a blessing. Rest now. The stories have been told, the secrets shared, the knowledge preserved. Tomorrow brings its own challenges, but tonight, you've honored those who came before and prepared those who come after. Sweet dreams. Dear listener, may your sleep be deep and your awakening gentle. The medieval women watch over you now, their struggles transformed into your strength. Their whispers become your lullabies, and